Hey, Board Game Geeks! Happy New Year from GameSpasm. Let's talk about Exodus Event Horizon. This is from NSKN Games. It is the second expansion to their hit game, Exodus Proxima Centauri. It's also the last piece of content that they're going to put out for this game. It's not common for people to say it, but they have said it. They are closing this off. It is a third part of their Exodus trilogy. What's really interesting is that everything that's in this box came as a labor of love from Rainier Alforz, and I'm very sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. He is a fan of Exodus who contacted NSKN Games and said, hey, I've got all these ideas for the game. What do you think? They said, we love it. Let's make it the last expansion. So Exodus Event Horizon is a set of modules that you can add on to Exodus. You can add it on to just the base game, or if you have Edges of Extinction, you can add it on to that as well. It works well with both. So we're going to take a look at some of the modules that are here for those who are interested. Maybe you want to get a copy of it secondhand. It is a hot item right now because it is not going to be reprinted. They have said that clearly. This is it for Exodus. So let's take a look, see what you think. So let's first talk about this excellent little add-on that came with this expansion, and that little add-on is this big box. The first two games came in a box about this size, standard board game size these days, sort of the square, what is that, 4-inch, 3.5-inch, whatever box. And as a stretch goal we didn't actually meet, but they were generous enough to give us anyways, Exodus Event Horizon comes in this extra beefy box that will allow you to put all of your contents inside, if you're not me. If you're me, you thought it would be a good idea to glue all the stands to the ships, and so I keep the the Edge of Extinction box here with all of my ships inside, including some really cool ships I found online. Go to Board Game Geek, you can find the information. I was using these as the Centurion ships, and I don't know how that's going to work with the new expansion stuff. We'll see. But this has been a bit of a problem for me. So don't do what I did. Don't glue your ships to the bases. And if you don't, you'll be able to fit everything in here. So here's the box. And if you want to see the back, since it's already a mess inside, no harm, no foul. Here's an example of everything that comes in the box. Let's look at the modules, shall we? Now, before we get too much further, I want to point out that if you go to the NSKN Games website, Interactive Setup, you will be able to use this very handy tool. Just tell it which expansions you have, how many players, and whether or not you're going to be playing a scenario and which modules you want to use. And it will actually tell you specifically how to set the game up and how the map should look, instead of having to go through the if-then-else sort of red and blue coloring that comes with the book. So heads up on that. Head over to the NSKN website to use the Interactive Setup system. Okay, what we got here is a very basic setup of Exodus with both expansions. You'll notice I've only set up one player, firstly because I don't want to clean up that part of the table, but also because, as you know, Exodus is a table swallower, and you need a lot of room. And since I don't need to set up a full second player, I didn't. I just set up enough of the game to show you the new modules and how they work. Now, another thing you may be asking, if you've never seen the first expansion, Edge of Extinction, you're thinking, dude, where did you get those stands for the ships? That is incredible. That looks so good. And the answer is, they were part of the Kickstarter bonuses for doing that. These are what I should not have glued to. You may also be asking yourself, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold the phone. What is this? What is this giant, sexy crib sheet with all this incredibly detailed and involved information? Why do you have all these extra ships? Why do you have another tack board? What is going on here? So, if that's your reaction, it's because you didn't get Edge of Extinction when it was available. Let's talk, shall we? Let's just come over here on the couch for a second. Right here. Let's have a talk, okay? You and me. Sometimes in life, we make mistakes. And we have to learn to live with those mistakes. We acknowledge them, and we move on. You could also desperately try to find a used copy of Edge of Extinction. And you should, if you can't accept that you've missed the opportunity. But it may not be too late. Regardless, I hope you've learned a valuable lesson. And in the future, you will just give all of your money to the games. Don't anybody responsible ignore this. anyways, this has been an important conversation that we had to have, and I hope you've learned a valuable lesson. Okay, come on, let's go back to the game. All right, the first module in the Event Horizon expansion is bonus actions. So if you're familiar with the game, and you have to be familiar with the game to watch this video, it's going to be utter nonsense if you're not. So just heads up, but at least you'll get to see the bits, so that's cool. You know, there's a bonus action deck, and one action is picked every round. Here's the new ones. This bonus right here lets you get any upgrade for which you've already researched the technology. That's pretty cool. This here is once per game. This one can be pulled, and then it gets thrown out. You get an extra action this turn, which is kind of awesome. But that's the only time it can be done through the whole game, and there's no reactions. This is advanced cloning, or accelerated cloning, which is pretty cool. Everybody just immediately gets 2 population on their home planet, and then there is no bonus action round or part of the round that game, that time. And then we've got here, remove 1 damage from each one of your ships. And that is also pretty cool. Now these get mixed into the bonus action deck, which usually just has 6 cards in it. So every round the Vice Chancellor will shuffle this up, and he or she, will pick, they will pick 6 of these cards, and then they will make their choice from the 6 chosen cards to give to the Chancellor for the bonus action. So very simple, not complicated. It adds a little bit of flavor to the game, and adds no time or complexity. So first module, I'm digging it. Oh man, what's wrong with my thumbnail? Oh man. All right, let's talk about the second module. That is the Centurion Resistance. The Centurions have always been here to resist us in the base game and in Edge of Extinction, but they've always been kind of easy. And by the end of the game, they're a complete pushover if they're even on the board anymore. Now, the Edge of Extinction expansion did add combat cards, such as these, that added a little variety to the combat when you're fighting the aliens, but it still didn't really make them any sort of challenge. So if you really want to perk the challenge in your game, you can use this second module for the Centurion Resistance. In the base game, you had 3 different levels of Centurions. You had level 1, 2, and 3, and you had the 3 different decks that you use to determine how tough they are, and you had combat cards. With this new module, these chits are replaced, and you can see on the other side of the board, I'm using the new pieces. This chit is a regular strength Centurion fleet. This is a strong Centurion fleet. All the blue and yellow chips are replaced by the regular fleets, and all the red chits are replaced by a strong fleet. What do these mean? So first off, they don't come off the board like the old ones used to. In the old game, if you killed this chit, it was gone off the board for the rest of the game. In the new version of the game, when you have a chit there and you kill it, you flip it over to the bloody side. And as long as you're still in that hex, it will stay bloody. But the moment there are no players in that hex, during the upkeep stage, the repair ship stage, the ships will come back. So they are always around on the board. This really brings a little more challenge to the game. I'm saying this, I'm talking outside of my neck. I haven't played with this yet, but it's obvious that they are much more challenging than they used to be. Also, you don't just pull a red, yellow, or blue card like you did in the old one. You actually use this chart to see how many and what type of cards that you pull. So if you're in the first round of the turn and you pull you go after a regular fleet, then you just pull 1 yellow card. If you go after a strong fleet, one of the orangey yellowy chits, then you have to add 1 to the resistance level. So if it's the 3rd round and I go up against a normal fleet token, I'm pulling a yellow and a red, or sorry, a blue and a red. But if it's the 3rd round and I'm going up against a strong fleet, then I'm pulling a yellow and a red. So as you can see, these ramp up throughout the game and get tougher and tougher, meaning that the Centurion Resistance is not to be trifled with or disregarded the way we, you know, you and I, we go way back, the way we used to back in the day. So that definitely adds a lot of meat to the game and makes it so that the Centurions are not so much of a pushover. And if you want more to keep it interesting, then they have added ground combat. So let's talk about Module 3, Centurion Outposts. Here we are, folks. This is Centurion Outposts, Module number 3. This adds a fair amount of challenge and a little bit of time to the game. From now on, if you use this expansion, every map tile is going to have a Centurion Outpost tile on it. when you land your population, you have to flip it over and see what level it is. Sometimes it's level 0 and you just throw them away. Sometimes they're level 1 or 2. What this means is, after you land your population, at the conquest stage, you have to try to blow that outpost up. So this is a level 1 outpost. I get to roll 1 die for every population I have on the planet, plus 1. So I would be able to roll 3 dice. If I get 5s or 6s are hits, and if I get enough hits equal to the level of the outpost, it goes away. And then I get to pick from the outpost cards. I get a nice reward for my efforts, and get an engine here and some CP, or here I get myself a Dark Raider and some CP, or I can keep it till the end of the game. Similar to the Resistance cards, there's also level 2 outposts, and you get even better rewards when you blow those up. Right? Defeat a level 1 Centurion Outpost anywhere on the board and take its reward. That's kind of wild. So you can do that if you manage to blow them up. However, they might resist. Perhaps I didn't roll enough, and now they're going to hit back. And if they roll, they get to roll 1 die plus the level of the outpost, so in that case 2. And if they happen to roll a 5 or a 6, that means that everybody on the planet with population loses 1 population at that point. Now, in addition to this, there's some new technologies that are added to the game with this module. You'll see here, there's another, I keep hitting that. There's another tech board right here. These black cubes are there to show that those particular technologies are not available with this module. But we do have surface cloaking, which if you research that, you can just ignore the outposts, which is pretty nice, but it's an expensive technology. Infrastructure makes it so that you are able to do, I think, 1 extra damage to them. The perimeter defense means that you take 1 less damage from them. And this last one, quantum targeting, means that 4s also count as successful hits against the outposts. And I take that back, by the way. The infrastructure means you roll an additional die. So all this combat is done. It's a single roll for you and a single roll for them. And it adds ground combat to the game, which I thought was kind of missing. And I like it. It's pretty cool. It adds something to the game. Oh, you also start with 5 victory points when you use this module, but I don't know why, because I haven't played yet. So that is module number 3. That's one I intend to throw in as well when I play. Let's check out module 4. Exploration is the name of this module, and with good reason. You'll notice that the setup of the board now has almost all of the planets face down. A lot of people, myself included, used to tease and say that Exodus was a 3x game because you could see everything ahead of time and you knew where you were going. With this module, it changes that and really makes the game a true 4x game. All of the planets except for your starting planet and your second starting planet, if you're using Exodus, which of course you should be, Edge of Extinction, all the other planets are face down and you don't know what they are. Anytime a ship moves into... Oh, wait, let me say this. So in the old game, before this expansion, before this module, if you blew up a planet with a graviton rocket, then you would flip you would flip it over to indicate that the planet was destroyed. So since you can't do that anymore because face-down planets mean they haven't been explored yet, we now have destruction tokens. So if this was a planet that got blown up, we would place a destruction token on it, like so. And from now on, that planet has been destroyed. If a ship tries to fly through an area where there's been a destroyed planet, then that player has to roll 1 die for every ship that rolled in, that rolled in, like a gangster. And if you roll a 5 or a 6 on any of your dice, you deal 1 damage to one of your ships of your choice. So it's like a debris field that you fly into. That's kind of cool. Now, when you fly into a face-down hex with your ship, you would move your ship in, then you would flip the hex over and draw one of these event cards. So there's always new cool things happening when you fly in. And you'll see that some of these have a black bear thing there. Some of them have an evil steel face like MF Doom. And he's a rapper. He's kind of awesome. And you also have boons, which are good ones. If more than one player is there, 1 card is drawn, but it affects everyone. Banes are bad. Boons are good. Black is somewhere in between. And what's interesting is that this adds some flavor to the game, including some tokens, a bevy of tokens, if you will. You might find a wormhole with that comes out somewhere else. That's just kidding. Here's the wormhole. You might find a wormhole. You might get a bounty on you, which means that the next player to blow you up will get some extra points. I think I'm describing that wrong, but that's okay. No space combat. There's an electromagnetic field, and nobody can fight in that area for the rest of the game. Then you have the planet of interest. If you get a planet of interest, it means that that planet is just going to be worth more points at the end of the game. Okay, let me go back. The bounty gets put on you if you pull the card, and at the next combat, whoever wins gets it. That includes you. If you had the bounty on you, but you win the combat, you get the 2 points. So that's what that means. This is the other wormhole, because when you get a wormhole, you're going to place a second one somewhere. And what might be my favorite chit in any game ever is this chit right here that says, throw away this token. Best chit ever. And I refuse. You can't make me. This chit is forever a part of my collection. I should frame it as an example of my rebellious nature. Awesome chit. So there is a technology that's associated with this particular module. And let's not hit the legs on anything this time. Good job. So you'll see all of these are blacked out except for this one down here, sector scan. If you have sector scan, when you fly into a planet that has been blown up, the debris field, you can ignore it if you have the sector scan technology. Furthermore, if you research sector scan, you can also ignore all of the bane events that might happen to you. And frankly, at the bargain cost of 2 CP for that technology, I can't imagine why you wouldn't research sector scan. Also with this module, you start with 5 victory points at the beginning of the game. This one's pretty simple. As far as what they say it adds to the game, they say it adds about 5 minutes a player, adds a little more challenge. I think it's a super welcome addition to the game. I love the idea of not knowing what's out there. For people who are concerned about not knowing which planets are where, just remember that trade is an absolutely critical part of this game. And if you're not trading for the resources you need, you're doing it wrong. That is Module 4. How are we doing? We're not even halfway through. There's so much new stuff in here. This next one, though, is pretty straightforward. So let's talk about the new planets that came in the expansion. It was a successful Kickstarter, and they were using new planets and planet types as stretch goals. So yeah, we got a lot of them. We got quite a few new planets, which adds a ton of variety to the game and a lot of replayability, because you can't just throw all of these in. You only use a certain number of them based on the number of players. So in a 2-player game like I have set up here, you only use, as I have here, 2 of the special planet hexes that come in the expansion game. I don't know if you can see this. This is a bit of a downside. There's some color shifting between the base game tiles and the new Event Horizon tiles. You can see that there's a difference in color. The bigger problem being that if you're playing the last module, Exploration, you can pretty easily tell which tiles come from the new expansion. So you're going to know you're heading towards a fancy planet. That's what I'm calling them from now on, the fancy planets. You know you're heading towards a fancy planet even if you don't necessarily know what it is. So, very quickly, let's look at these new types of planets. You've got these fancy planets here. They have no resources, but they're worth a ton of points. So that's that type. Here you've got finite planets. No mining actions can affect these planets. When they're out of resources, that's it for the game. They are done. Here you have something different. This is a barren planet. When you do a resource, during resource production, you roll a die, and if you get a 4 or higher, then it'll produce normally. Otherwise, it yields no production that turn, and if multiple players occupy the planet, each person has to roll separately. Mining actions have no effect on them, and they never become depleted. So that's an interesting twist. There's also planets that have certain advanced they're advanced because they have technology related to them. So each player who has at least 1 population on the planet gets a 1 CP discount to any research of that type. So you've got the 3 types of research are all represented. See, I had these all lined up, all nifty. So you have all 3 types of research represented here, and so you get a discount of 1 CP for each one of these planets that you have at least 1 population on. You have hippie planets. They are peaceful. They cannot be targeted by rockets. I'm not sure. There's a theme there. I just don't know what it is. Space combats can still happen, but there are no Centurion Outposts on these, and with Edge of Extinction, if you have the Commandos ability of the Solaris Confederation, they cannot be used on peaceful planets. So that adds a little something, something. And then these are glorious. Dual resource planets. 2 dice are placed on it, and both resources are tracked and gained separately, which is awesome. So in this game that I set up, you'll see that I have one of the barren planets right here. I didn't put a die on it because a die is unnecessary. And over here I've got one of the dual planets. This particular one is gives you CP and it gives you phasium, right? That's the green stuff. Exinium and phasium. Yeah, that's the green stuff. Alternatively, we refer to it as upgradium, and the red stuff is shipbuildium, but that's not official. So those are, it adds no challenge, it adds no extra time to the game, it just adds a ton of flavor, and I'm just hi, you haven't seen me in a while, it's just been the board. Again, the planets and the exploration are the two things about this expansion I'm most excited about. The ground combat I like too, that's pretty good too. But I love the flavor that it's adding to the game, and I think that those two, especially exploration and new planets, should just be used all the time. Now, let's talk about Module 6, which is Proxima Centauri, the actual star. This should be good, right? Yes. Hey, wait a second. What's that in the middle of the board? Is that a giant star? Why, yes it is. So now this changes how you navigate the board, and it adds a couple more technologies into the game. It doesn't seem like maybe, having an impassable hex in the middle of the board is a big deal. But what's interesting is the way that the 6 hexes around the center of the board are affected by having this star in the middle. So we don't have a High Council hex anymore, and that is an impassable center hex. Now all of the 6 hexes around it now have solar wind affecting them, and there are technologies you can research in order to take advantage of those solar winds. So you've got over here, let's see, we've got solar shield booster and solar cannon booster, if you can see those. The solar shield booster, if you're in a hex with the solar winds around them, then if you're engaged in combat with anybody, whether it's a player or the Centaurians, each of your shield strengths is increased by 1. That's a big deal, especially in a 2-player game where the map almost entirely consists of the 6 hexes around Proxima Centauri. Having that technology, which is not cheap though, mind you, it's 23 CP to get it, that means all of your ships have +1 shields, which means that just building a ship and not putting shields on it gives it at least 1, which is pretty nice. That was totally redundant. You knew that already. The cannon booster is similar, except that now you hit on 4 or better. So 4, 5s, and 6 counts as hits if you have the solar booster in any of those 6 areas around the star. That's it for this module. It's very easy to add in. It adds no time to the game, but it does add some strategy. I think it's going to mean more in a bigger game when you have 4 or 6 players and you have a bigger map, and there are, because in this case, if you've got the money to spend, it's no-brainer. And I would have the money to spend because I'm the Arctic Dominion, and they just print money or crystallized platinum. Don't think about it too hard. So this is a neat one. You could just do this instead of the center hex. Actually, what I think is interesting about this is that if your games are like some of the games that I've played, there's always a last-minute rush at the end of the game to take the center hex to get those extra, 5 victory points you have at the end of the game for getting that. So that actually changes the end game dynamic to where your strategy is not going to involve trying to rush into the middle of the board and get those 5 points at the end, because it's an impassable hex. So interesting. Let's take a look at Jump Gates, Module 7. Did you see me look at the rule book just then to see what it's called? No, you didn't see that. Let's look. Jump Gates. What? That's right. Module 7, Jump Gates. Okay, this is a 20-year-old reference here, sorry. Alexa, knock it off. Jump gates allow for, they're not hard to use, they don't really add much time to the game, but they are cool. Anytime you are doing a build action, instead of building a ship, you have the option of building a jump gate. The jump gates can be placed either on your home planet or any other hex where you currently have one of more of your ships. You can see here on this handy card that you use with this module that a jump gate costs 1 ship buildium. Exinium. And these turn order cards, by the way, are awesome. You can use them with any of the modules. In particular, they're handy for this one because you have the cost of the jump gates and you can store your gates on there until you use them. If you have Edge of Extinction, which of course you should, then you use the side with the red bits on it The blue bits are for the Event Horizon add-on stuff. And if you don't have Edge of Extinction, that is a shame, but then you'd use the opposite side that doesn't have any of the red bits on there. So you can place a jump anywhere that you have a ship in the game, and they cannot be destroyed. Even if the planet they're on top of gets hit by a graviton rocket or something and blows it up, the jump gate stays. They cannot be used by other players, and you can have a jump gate in the same hex as another player. What are they for? I haven't told you yet. So if I place a jump gate here, then at the end of any conquest stage, in reverse turn order, the players can choose to any one hex in the map and take all of their ships from that hex and jump them over to where the jump gate is. So it allows for super fast movement across the board. So maybe you just fly a Dark Raider across the board, drop a jump gate, he gets blown up, but for the rest of the game, you have the ability to sort of warp your forces into one hex over on the side of the board. They have some suggestions too in the book on how you might want to place those blue spots, indicate where you might want to put jump gates. Pretty neat idea. And I could take or leave this one. I think this is something I wouldn't add in right away, but a cool module. And similar, let's go into Module 8 a little bit, and we'll talk about those communication satellites. Module 8 brings communication satellites into the game. They cost 3 CP to build. Each player gets 6 communication satellites in their color. And the way these work is that the first one must always be built on your home planet. Now, anytime you have combat in a hex that has one of your communication satellites, you get +1 damage in each combat round. In addition, you also are going to get a +1 range bonus when launching weapons of mass destruction from that specific hex. Now, if you want to build another communication satellite, you must build it in a hex adjacent to one that you've already built. Meaning you can sort of have a chain of communication satellites going across the board. Again, they give you some examples of how you might want to set them up to your advantage. I'm absolutely going to use it. I mean, I'm going to throw in as much stuff as possible the first chance somebody gives me, but that's just me. Let's look at module number 9, energy barriers. We're almost done, folks. If you're interested in doing module number 9, energy barriers, doesn't add any time, not very challenging, you're going to get these little guys to add to the game. Each player gets 1 energy barrier, and after everything else is set up in reverse turn order, everybody can place 1 energy barrier on the game. Now, you can't put it on an edge tile, you can't put it on a hex with a home planet, and you cannot put an energy barrier on a hex that already has an energy barrier. So this would not be legal, but that would be fine. What do energy barriers do? Well, for most of the ships, any ship passing through an energy barrier automatically takes 1 damage. However, the Dark Raiders, that's these little guys, Dark Raiders, finally there's a reason for them being called dark, they do not take damage when going through energy barriers. So they're able to fly around unimpeded by those. Also, if you are counting distance for weapons of mass destruction, energy barriers increase the total distance by 1. Very simple, little flavor, kind of interesting. I'll probably use it just to see what it's like. Not a huge add-in, but cool all the same. Module number 10, leaders. If you were a Kickstarter backer and you paid the right tier level, then you may be on one of these cards. I actually think it's kind of neat that the TAMs decided to just put their whole family on the card. So that's pretty cool. Leaders just give unique special abilities at the beginning of the game. Everybody draws 2 random leaders, and you choose one to keep. You put it face up in front of yourself, and they just add a unique benefit to the game. So it's sort of on top of all of the faction boons you get from playing with Edge of Extinction. Each faction is quite different. This will also add some variety to that as well. There are different types. You've got, the magistrate, the tactician, the engineer, the strategist, the scientist, the visionary, the commander. It's pretty cool. They have a couple of different specific rules for the different types that you take. And if you don't have Edge of Extinction, then this is a good way to add some of that asymmetrical play to your game. I don't know much about these. I do worry that some of them are stronger than others. Immediately before the start of your first turn, take any standard action of your choice. That's an example of one that comes across as maybe a little weak to me. I think that getting the free ships is a better than just being able to take 1 free action. Some of these give you benefit throughout the entire game, no matter what. So roll an extra die whenever you control 2 ships of the same type in the same battle. That's nice. So anyways, these add a little flavor to the game too. And yeah, so that is module number 10. We have touched on all the modules, which is pretty sweet. There is one more thing to talk about, though. Let's look at that here together, and that is the scenario of the Centurion Stronghold. This scenario is fascinating. This creates the opportunity to play this game as a co-op or a semi-co-op, and you'll see there's different setups for whether it's semi-co-op or fully co-op. Semi-co-op is a little bit easier to beat up the Stronghold. The Stronghold is right here on the back of this. So this is the Centurion Stronghold. And in this game, nobody wins if this thing doesn't get blown up. It always has 8 guns. It always has 8 shields. And the damn thing spits out these fighters throughout these warships. Where are they? In my bag of aliens. So throughout the game... None of those are the right aliens. All right, let's make a mess. Here we go. So these are the warships, and there's also these chits that indicate how strong the Centurion Stronghold is. You've got these right here. So you have to attack the Stronghold in the middle of the board and take it out, and meanwhile, every round, these warships are getting shot out of the middle of the board, and they are equivalent in strength to 2 more than the current resistance level. So if you're playing in co-op mode, they just give you a little cheat sheet here. So this is for Edge of Extinction. So if you have this is how many will come out, 1 per player, and based on what round of the game is, it'll tell you how many resistance cards are used. And in addition to whatever the shields are on those cards, they also get a shield bonus. And in this, if you don't blow up all the ships, it doesn't count. You don't get any of the rewards. You discard the card, and I believe they get rejuvenated. Yeah, they do get rejuvenated because there's no way to show damage to these chits. You either blow up both of the cards that you have to draw, or however many cards, or you don't. In addition, they always do +1 damage to whatever the cards say. So this is hard. If you want to have the co-op experience, and I think a lot of people really enjoy playing co-op. I know I do. And I'm looking forward to me and Alan, my buddy, my partner in crime, playing this game as a co-op game. If you're playing fully co-op, I believe you're allowed to attack the center with each other. You're allowed to go in and fight the bad guys together. I'm just reading the book right now. I don't know that much yet. But the game ends immediately when the Stronghold is defeated. Then you score as normal, with the most points being the winner. You lose when the last warship squadron is placed on the board, or if it remains defeated at the end of the final turn of the game. So, was I even pointing at myself just then? So yeah, it adds a lot more tension to the game, gives you something serious to really work towards, and just very meaty, very meaty. This is one of those Kickstarters. Very often when I kickstart something, I don't worry about when it's going to show up. I was waiting for this one with bated breath, and I'm super happy that it's here. I'm looking forward to my first solitaire play. I did totally gloss over, as in not mention, that they add a whole new solitaire play to this, where you can do the Centurion Stronghold scenario by yourself with a very special map setup. And yeah, so there's just so much variety that's added as a result of this expansion. And that's a no-brainer, right? 10 modules, you can use all of them, you can use some of them. None of them are mutually exclusive. I don't think there's any... No, that's not true. That's not true. You cannot use Proxima Centauri and the Centurion Stronghold at the same time. So I take that back. But for the most part, this just adds a ton of meat to this game. And what a fantastic last act for Exodus to have this labor of love done by a fan who really answered a lot of our own wishes for this game by adding in the things that we thought that it needed. Ground combat, real exploration, a little more asymmetrical play with the leaders, and definitely tougher combat with the Centurion Resistance. That they were pretty pale, they were pretty weak, and now they are an intimidating force on the board that you're always going to have to deal with, whether it's with the outposts at the ground combat or the fact that they're hard now. They actually are a dominating presence in the galaxy. Great way for this game to go out. I haven't played yet. Again, I keep saying that, but I am a veteran of playing Exodus, so I feel like I'm qualified to say that these are needed components that I'm glad to see added to the game. If you like the base game, if you like Edge of Extinction, I couldn't imagine why you wouldn't enjoy getting your hands on this stuff and playing with the new expansion, Event Horizon. So thanks for taking some time. Again, this video is always longer than I plan it to be, but I get excited and I want to talk about stuff. So please leave your comments, subscribe if you want to. I'm going to be posting this on Board Game Geek as well. I look forward to seeing your comments there. There's not a lot of action yet on the Event Horizon Board Game Geek page, but I'm hoping to maybe we can generate some and have some good conversations and tell me what you guys think about these new expansion bits. Thanks, guys. I will see you on the Geek. Take it easy.